Bollocks. Steve White, Trek Boy 89 for Steve Arts 89 here. So I just watched a video from the Scitrek guy, Tachyon Pulse guy, and he's had a lot of insight, a lot of reports apparently from people on the inside of Star Trek, particularly the legal department. And I've been watching a lot of his videos, and a lot of them are being reported as rumours and that on other sites and other YouTube channels and stuff. But he just put out something really frustrating. He did a video, and I already did a longer video of this, I'm just trying to make a short one, where he's basically saying none of the things that me and Midnight Sage and people like that, people who were there in 2007, 8, 9, watching the development of the Abrams films as they were coming up, happened. And it's really frustrating because we were all there watching it happen in real time. And it's really frustrating because he's basically saying it's a myth while also putting forward a couple of things that don't really make sense. I'm just going to try and make this short. So back in the day, Star Trek was cancelled. Enterprise was cancelled. This is the first time we'd ever gone without Star Trek. Some people in our whole lives. It was very scary. The fan magazines that had been sort of bought by the company had been shut down, the sites, they basically shut everything down because they didn't care, they didn't want to spend any more money on Star Trek. And it was a really scary time. Star Trek was just gone. And then we started to see fan sites like trekmovie.com come up. And that came up because we had heard that Paramount was going to do a new Star Trek film. So we were sort of relieved, but unsure of where they were going because there were rumours that it was going to be a reboot. And then it came out that it's okay. What we're doing is we're doing an alternative timeline within the same Star Trek universe. So you'll see the original Star Trek and then we'll veer off and we'll do our own film that's totally in its own bubble and won't affect the rest of Star Trek. So your Star Trek's safe, but we're going to have a new Star Trek with younger actors, younger characters, and it's going to be a whole new franchise with TV shows and games and books and comics and all these things. And it's all going to be sort of watched over by J.J. Abrams, and it's going to be a whole thing. And that was okay. We didn't have any reason to really worry about that. It was like, okay. Because like I said, it kept the original safe and it's just doing a new thing, so we're all fine. And then a couple of things happened. It was reported that basically when they first approached this, they thought all they had to do was create a new timeline within Star Trek. They could show the original Star Trek and just have a different timeline. But they realized CBS was a lot more protective of their content because although they're both owned by the same overall parent company, they were different competing companies, and they had Star Trek that they had been given that was making a lot of money through merchandise, and they didn't have to produce anything new. So they were happy to take money from someone like Paramount to make new movies or new TV series or whatever, but they needed them to make it basically different enough that they couldn't be confused. There was no brand confusion. And that was one of the articles that came out, and a lot of the things that was talked about at the time was JJ couldn't do all the things he wanted to do. He wanted to do TV series and all these things. He wanted to create a whole new sort of universal franchise, and he couldn't do it because CBS, the only way it would really work is if they stopped making their stuff. And they laughed at him at the idea of affecting anything they did and basically said, you can make these, but you have to do it in this little realm here. And that's where the 25% thing came from. Now, he's right that that was not in the contracts because it is something you can't quantify, but no one ever said it was in the contracts. It was like a verbal gentleman's agreement thing where it's like, okay, we're going to give you this license. We're going to keep our Star Trek over here in this lane, and we're going to keep making money from it. And you can pay us to make Star Trek over here in this lane, and you can make your Star Trek, see how that goes for you. As long as no one's going to confuse yours with mine, we're happy. And they had that agreement, and it went through into the production, and we saw people talking about the 25% rule, and we actually saw it actually written down on paper in a photo. Someone posted it not knowing they weren't supposed to talk about it. That's documented. And just because you can't find that in the actual legal contracts because it wasn't actually something put in the legal contracts. So I understand they can do it with some things like patents and stuff like that because you can quantify something like that. But quantifying something like this is different. So he's right on that level, but that doesn't mean it didn't exist. It just meant it wasn't actually in the legals. But it was understood and it was talked about, and we saw it, and then they tried to pull it back and act like it wasn't there because they were trying to sell us that, no, it's the same Star Trek universe, because that was their way of doing it. It's like, well, we're going to make it totally different, but we're going to tell people it's the same so we don't lose any of the old fans, but we don't step on CBS's toes. And it was just very messy. And then when it got to the new Star Trek series, the new Trek shows by Kurtzman and Secret Hideout, they totally were made in the JJ universe, didn't resemble Star Trek at all, but we were being told that's the original universe. So that was a mess. And one of the other things that's baffling about what he's saying is he's saying that the original canon Star Trek universe, the Gene Roddenberry universe, he's claiming it ended in season 2 when Gene stopped working on the show. Everyone who worked on the show in season 1 and 2 continued on working right up to the end of Enterprise, the people who are in charge. So that is the same universe. There is no different. Even if Gene bowed out, retired, and died, it doesn't stop that from being the original canon Gene Roddenberry universe. So he's trying to separate them. That doesn't make any sense. He's just making stuff up and it's not making any sense. Once that all ended, and then we started the JJ stuff, there's a definite difference there between production companies, contracts and so forth. But to try and suggest that happened in the middle of Next Generation is ridiculous. I don't know what agenda he has here, but he's doing something. And I know he's in bed with Alec Peters. And Alec Peters, I can't comment on Alec Peters because I don't want him calling me again because he likes to attack people who say anything about him. Probably shouldn't have even said that much, but yeah. So that's my opinion. I'm entitled to it. So yeah, the other thing he's saying, which is really weird, he's saying that the new Secret Hideout stuff that's made, because of the contract they have with Paramount CBS, they own the rights to all the new elements that they've created. And Paramount can't use that without him, just like he can't do a Star Trek show without Paramount. So they're kind of involved in that way. And that's keeping him, enmeshed in the production and keeping his contracts alive because they can't get rid of him and continue on with the shows. He's asking us to believe that, which no one else is saying. He's the one reporting this, and he's saying it comes from the legal people at Paramount that he's apparently in touch with. And I'm like, seriously though, what people in the legal department are going to be talking to someone like him and not know the legalities of the fact they shouldn't be doing that? So I now starting to wonder if any of this is legit on his part. But yeah, it's just really, really weird. And like I said, people like me who were there back in the day, just scared for Star Trek because it was suddenly gone, and watching for every little tidbit, and obsessing on every little soundbite and interview, telling us that basically none of this happened. We didn't live that experience. And other people will argue that, well, where's your proof? And I've had shills that used to come to my videos. Every video they used to watch and comment on because they were paid by Paramount, basically. And once Paramount stopped paying them, they all disappeared. I don't have anyone doing that now, so it's nice. But one of the things they'd say is, where's your proof? I'm like, I can't find an interview that was printed on a random website 16, 17 years ago. And I don't have it in print. Unless I printed it out, I don't have it. And it's different because back in the day, before the internet, something had to be printed in a fanzine, in a newspaper, a independent book, an official publication, or be on a news broadcast or a TV show. And all that stuff was sort of kept. So we can look back at stuff from the 60s and 70s and 80s, 90s. But once we got into the late 90s, once the internet started to be a thing, there's a lot of stuff that went online that we just assumed would be there because we were told the internet was this vast thing and things would just be there forever. But if a month or so after an article is printed, you try and click on the link, it's already gone because people realise that archiving this stuff and keeping this stuff costs money. A lot of the websites that came up, they disappeared again, and no one's got all that stuff. So I printed out a lot of stuff, but I can't even find that. Some of it I scanned. So this is how old it is. I would go to uni. I had internet. I'd used the internet at uni at the library, and I didn't have my own computer or my own internet service. And a lot of people didn't back then. So what they would do is they just look at stuff online. Now, what I would do, I didn't have the time to do that, so I would print everything out. I'd print out all the articles, all the news stories, and all the comment sections for these, and they'd be like stacks of paper long. And then I'd get on the bus for an hour home and then read all that. And some of that I kept, some of it I scanned, but most of it I didn't because it never occurred to me that 10, 15 years from now, people would be saying that didn't happen. So people saying, where's your proof? We didn't back all this stuff up because we assumed it was backed up somewhere. So that's really frustrating. Now, some of the press interviews that J.J. Abrams did, there must be proof of them somewhere, but Paramount would probably have all that, and they are obviously trying to create this narrative where there's all one Star Trek because they seem to think that the only way to keep both sides of the fandom is to lie and say the new Star Trek is the original Star Trek, that the Prime Universe is all the same thing. When the Prime Universe was a universe they created for the J.J. Abrams films to, take the place of the original Star Trek canon universe because they couldn't use that because CBS wouldn't let them because they didn't want them, confusing the two Star Treks. And anyone saying that a business like CBS wouldn't do that because they have the same, parent company is ridiculous. They're in competition with each other. They're not going to sue each other. That was the only safety. If either side did go over a line, they weren't going to get sued because it was the same parent company, and they're the ones who pay for everything. But so far as protecting their own divisions and their own, product, they were absolutely doing that. And anyone saying different is just naive or ridiculous. So it's bizarre that he's come out with these. I'm not sure what he's trying to do. But I just had to comment on all that and try and do it in one video, because last time I did a really long video and then did a secondary video. I'm like, no, I can just say it a bit quicker and everything. And so I don't know what's behind this guy. I personally don't get any money from my YouTube videos. I do them for the love of Star Trek and for, just talking and sharing things. I don't know, this guy makes money. He's involved with Alec Peters. I don't know if this is a shilling thing. Don't know what this is happening. I don't know what this is about, but we'll see.